right. Well, welcome to another episode of the Auto Repair Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Walker, and Kim is my co-host as usual.
I'm here.
And today we are here with Mac Akram from Mac's Auto Repair. And he has a very interesting story, and we're going to dig into that story some. But first, I do want to thank our sponsors, Repair Pal. Repair Pal will bring more clients to your shop through the largest auto repair shop website in the world, repairpal.com. You can find more at repairpal.com/shops. Well, welcome, Mac. We're glad to have you here today.
Pleasure is mine, sir. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, I'm excited. You know why I'm excited? Brian knows why I'm excited.
Why are you excited?
You don't know?
No?
Because we usually have a really good idea of where we're going with the story, and we're just going to be super raw today. And I am all about that.
So we have no idea where this conversation is going, but Mac has a really awesome story. And, I know of it, just from what you've told me, where it starts in 2018 when you immigrated from Baghdad to the United States. So tell us a little bit about your story.
Oh boy, I don't know how far you want to hear back, but I'll try to make it very short and to the point. So I was born and raised in Iraq, Baghdad. My father is Iraqi, my mom is from Armenia. So I grew up with two different, similar, but two different cultures, in other words, in one house, right? Mm-hmm. But it's very similar in a lot of stuff. After the war in 2003, we left Iraq in 2000, and the war started 2003. We left in 2005, August of 2005, to Syria, and then through there we had to apply through the United Nations, to get immigrated. And to be honest, America was not anywhere outside the Middle East was the goal.
How old were you at that time?
So I was born in 89.
Okay.
1989. So when we left in 2005, I want to say I was probably 16.
Okay.
And then we stayed the process took about 4 years in Syria. The good thing about it is I got to meet my wife in 2006. But in 2009, we got immigrated to the state, December of 2009. And I was 19 at the time when we got here. It was me, my sister, mom, and dad. And kind of were very excited because we always hear about America as the land of opportunities. And back home, that was just in the movies. When we got here, I'm like, at first you take a few years to kind of learn the language. I was talking to you guys yesterday, learning things the hard way, the inside of the cultures, the inside jokes, things like that. So at first it takes a little while. A couple of years, it was just all over the place, trying to find your way around town and things like that. And then I just decided to learn automotive the right way. Both of my uncles, I should have actually started with this. Both of my uncles are old school automotive. They had huge shops in Baghdad, and they worked on everything, right? But I was I was too young for that. So I just knew here is a wrench, here is a socket, here is where you get in to do whatever, simple stuff. So it was always in my blood, and I always loved it. I was not a book smart. I'm still not a book smart, I was always with my uncle in the shop, outside, and things like this. So in 2011, I decided to learn the career the right way. I wanted to know everything pretty much about cars, and I loved it. I loved working on cars. I love fixing my own. I see that progress. I get that, hey, it's fixed, found the problem.
It can be addictive.
Yeah, and it is, it is. I'm not going to lie. So I joined Mesa Community College in Arizona. They had an automotive, a class
program.
Right there, program, yes. And 2 semesters into it, my instructor at the time, Nate Wynn, I asked him to find if he can find me a job somewhere to start this, because I was doing a different job and I was kind of studying the automotive at the Mesa Community College, and I had a lot of challenges with. And remember, this is me about 1.5 to 2 years in the country, so my English was very broken, and I had a hard time understanding terminology. So when they'll talk, I'm like, oh, what does this mean? So I go and I Google it up, and then I was I was working in a different industry, and I said, okay, if I'm really serious about this, let me start in this industry. It sinks in a lot better. And I started at Toyota. Nate got me a job right there as a quick loop. And it was 2012 or 13, I want to say at the time. And it just took off from there, quick loop for about a year. And then I was apprenticed by Tony Caraco as well, because Nate also worked at Big 2 Toyota, master's technician he was. So then I was apprenticed at Toyota dealership between Nate and Tony Caraco, which both later on, when I had my shop, worked for me.
Full circle.
And I love it. I'm very lucky, very proud to have them obviously in my life, and I love it. And then a line tech after a quick loop, and then I tried independent shops, fleet services, so on and so forth. And I was too fed up, and you've been in the business, Brian, obviously. I was too fed up with the dishonesty of service advisors and some technicians anyways, because obviously when I was there, it was flat rate was a thing. Today, flat rate is fading out slowly, and if you were not busy, you're not getting paid. And if you didn't find something wrong with the car, or the service advisor did not sell XYZ, then pretty much everybody loses, right? So there where it creates a need to sell, which is good for business, but a lot of times they use the dishonest shortcuts. I've heard service advisor, Sir Power Steering flushes on Priuses. It doesn't even have fluid. It's an electric steering system. So I was too fed up with that. And what really got me to worked out later in the independent shop is you get some of these cars, and they ask us to do a multi-point inspection, which I'm a firm believer in that. The messed up part is you go ahead and you inspect the vehicle, right? You're putting your work into it, you put your notes and all of that stuff. And initially the customer came in, check engine light on, for example, right? And you get to diagnose that as well. And Mr. Customer, here's what you're going to need. Your thermostat fell, so we're recommending, as a technician, we need thermostat. That'll be a good time to do a coolant flush. And then you factor in from your experience whether hoses will be a good time to replace, so on and so forth. So you recommend those. But then, hey, Mr. Customer, your rear shocks are blowing, and brakes, bearings, or whatever, right? My point is when I give that invoice to the inspection to the service advisor looks at it like this. He goes, oh. I go, what's up? What's wrong? He goes, well, let's not show all of this. I said, what do you mean? Why? And he goes, well, then the sale is not going to happen. I'm going to tell the customer that you need $8,000 worth of work. He's going to fly away. Let me sell the thermostat job and maybe your brakes, and the rest can wait, And I'm like, yeah, but he's about to be here again in 3-4 months. And this specifically applies on vehicles that are older. They don't hold their value as much to the customer anyways. And I said, he's going to be here in 3-4 months complaining about this noise, because his bearing about to fall out. Yeah. All right. And he goes, yeah, and we'll worry about it when we get there. I go, what if he did not really want to spend your $2,000 today, and then another $2,000 in 3 months? What if the customer decides, okay, I'm opt out. I don't want this vehicle. Go trade it in for something else. Why don't you present everything and let them choose, educate them, tell them the priorities and do that. Yeah. No, we lose a sale. I'm like, bro, this is just not right. So it happens so many times to where if I ever have my own shop, Yeah, from business standpoint, and I get to understand that a little later, numbers and all of that, sales, you want the sales. But, I'm going to give my customer the option. I'm going to educate my customer. I'm going to tell him how to actually own a car or what's wrong with his car. And hey, Mr. Customer, you got XYZ, and it's going to run this much to fix everything. All right. But here is why you're here today. Here is what we marked as red and kind of take priority as well and urgency. Here's what you can do the next 6 months to a year. And really, if this was a keeper vehicle and you had the long-term commitment to you want to keep it, you don't want to go trade it in or buy something else, then you're going to be thinking about rear shocks, flushing on the transmission, so on and so forth.
So was this the beginning of you starting to think about,
Dreaming.
I want to open my own shop?
Yes. That was the beginning of it, but I was too afraid to, again, at the time my English wasn't really perfect as well. I mean, it still is, but I was too afraid of few things, or what if I did not get it right? But that was the beginning of it. Yes, that's what it started. The frustration started right there.
Yeah.
Dishonesty started right there. And then, the other thing is all consumers do not understand our business and details, I should say. And then they become complaining or concerned why the price is so much, right? And on the other side is, as a shop owner or service advisor, all right, you're selling the strut, for example, at $350 a pop. You're including the strut mount if he knows what he's doing as a service advisor. Why are you getting very cheap product? Get the good product. But we're offering warranty. I said, that's great. But the customer downtown is going to come back in. That shock right there without naming brands. But that brand right there is going to fail on this car after a year or two.
Yeah.
And he's going to be back in again. Now you're going to have to pay me again to do it. And it's just not right,
You're not making a loyal customer. They're going to be questioning.
And it's not going to ride the same, and definitely not a longevity part where literally for another $50 sometimes, $20, you can get the OEM, brand in there and fix it right the first time type of thing, and back to spec. No, this one right here. So again, there's a lot of greed and a lot of cheating can be done in this industry, and I was too fed up of that.
Yeah.
So I decided to, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it differently. And see how it goes. So that's when I worked at a place where they had they had a fleet of taxis, and they were all hybrids, Toyota Priuses. And that fleet owner, kind of like when he comes to the shop, I want Mac to work on my vehicle. Mac to work on my vehicle. So when I finally quit it, rolled my toolbox back in the trailer, I obviously as a technician don't have the customer contacts, right? But I knew where his office was, and I knew where the company in Arizona was called at the time Discount Cab. So what I did is I'm like, okay, what do I do? We just had my first son, Fadi, and that was 2016, late 2016. And I'm telling my wife, I don't want to go work at another shop. I'm done with dealership politics. I don't know what to do. But 2 days later, I had an idea. I said, what? I'm going to get in touch with Ben, see if I can fix his Priuses, in our shop. I'll do at least in our garage, I'll do at least the small stuff. So then I went in and I applied for that taxi cab company as a driver, just so I can get in touch with the owner operator.
Smart guy.
And I literally worked. I went through their training, and it wasn't too long. It was about a day, 2 days, I think. I got my license, my background check, and all of that. I went to their office and I said, hey, I want to lease a cab from you, because that's how it worked as a driver. You go ahead, you lease the cab, you do your runs, you pay your lease, and you keep the rest. And then, hey, by the way, I'm Mac, that guy that used to fix his, your Priuses at XYZ. Oh, yeah. How you doing? Good to see you. I said, hey, if you guys need, anything, let me know. I'm not working there anymore. And I got a two-car garage in my house. So he goes, all right, very cool. Well, the next day, hey, Mac, light bulb out on this one. Hey, Mac, those brakes are making noises. Can you? And I said, of course, yeah, let's do it. So I literally worked for one day. I drove for one day for him, for the cab company. I got him in my house. And that was, at that point, it was mid-2017. I bought an air compressor in the house garage. I did the floors epoxy, got it all ready. Now, we had HOA in where we live. Did not take too long. We lived at the time, I lived at my parents', and it was a cul-de-sac where the house was. It did not take long to where they started. I wake up 6 in the morning, and there you go, 5 to 7 Priuses parked right there, and they're all green. So
the neighbors knew something was up at this
Yeah.
point.
And again, I had a 30-gallon air compressor in the garage,
Right.
floor jacks and the whole 9 yards. I even did engine swaps in my garage for these. So it didn't take too long. I got seized by the HOA, and that was December. And at that point, I'm like, okay, what do I do? HOA came in and he goes, hey, you got to seize immediately, man. You can't. Okay. Don't really have the money, neither understand the business side of the automotive, and how to open it, signage, and what to charge properly. Because I was doing it at my garage, I was charging the guy $55 an hour working in my garage, having him buy his own parts, or I'll go buy these parts for him sometimes. So I didn't know much about the logistics or all of that, right? But I know one thing, there is no going back, and we had to move out of my parents' because my son is getting a little older, too loud, and all of that
boy.
stuff. Yeah. I spoke to my wife. I'm like, hey, babe, here's what's going to happen. I'm thinking of, taking this to the next level, and I'm going to start, because Ben had 45 Priuses at the time. So it's a decent fleet. But I couldn't really afford a lift. I couldn't really afford a lot of the stuff. I was looking. And finally, and thank God, I found a place that came with its lift. It was a one bay. It was literally the 20 feet this way and kind of 45 in depth. One bay in there came with its own air compressor.
Sounds like a perfect start.
Thank you so much. I had an office about the size of this table right here. So I rented that thing, and I had $2,000 to my name at that time. The rent was $1,350. The guy was asking 1 month upfront and 1 month. So he was asking 2 months plus security deposit. So I had to borrow some money from my father. And, that's where it started. That's where my first shop in Tempe was, right off of Scottsdale Road in Curry. Started right there. And then I told Ben, hey, man, now I'm here. Let's get all these cars towed out, because half of them did not work. And then at that point, the drivers themselves start bringing their own personal vehicles, their wives, their families. And then not too long after, I became the Prius guy, the hybrid guy, the Prius guy. So I was good and cheap, and people will come over. And then obviously later down the road, I realized that I'm burning myself, and how the business should be ran properly. And that's when I joined Cecil. But right there in 2018 is when I took over that Tempe place. I started with one bay. In 2019, one bay and Ben only, that one customer, and then a few others on the side. In 2019, I had to get the building behind me because I was too busy. And a buddy of mine at Toyota, I'll call him after hours. Hey, man, can you come and help me this? Because at this point, I'm doing 7 days a week. I'm going in at 9 or 8 in the morning, and I'm not leaving until 10 or 11 at night, and I can't catch up.
Yeah.
So come help me. He came in, and we'll help, and, we'll team tack the work and get it done. But then there was always more. So my intention wasn't really doing it for public. Was, okay, let me do Ben as a fleet, and then I'm going to buy cars, fix them, and sell them type of thing. Well, I think I did one car purchase, fix, and flip, and couldn't have time to do anything else really, because at that point, more customers and everything came along, and the name got out there.
Yeah,
2
it was all
years.
word of mouth at that time.
Yeah. It was all word of mouth. And then, I think I did a year and a half to 2 years until I figured out, okay, all of a sudden my kid now obviously is 4 years old and I'm not there to, how did you get this old, right? I missed a lot, in other words. I burned myself quite a bit.
Yeah.
But I was very committed and I still am. And there is no going back,
So you went from working in your garage at your home to having this 20 by 40 facility that was, it was kind of already built out a little bit and, being the cheap guy.
Yeah.
To now, I mean, you have a pretty amazing, like beautiful facility. You're unapologetically like the high price leader in your area. How does a transition like that happen?
Very tough, very tough. Somebody said earlier in the room, you got to hit rock bottom before you realize that you got to come up. And that's, I think, what happened. Again, how I was raised and where I come from, there is no go back. You don't look back. So you want to take over the island, burn the boats. Tony Robbins says that all the time. And that's what I did. And when I found myself drowning and really no energy, I mean, I love my customer. I love working on cars, but man, I am tired. And then affecting my family on a personal level too, because I'm almost never there. And when I'm there, guess what I want to do? Just sleep. I want to sleep.
Yep.
I got in touch. I think that was just before COVID, or right through during COVID. I got in touch. WordPack started offering these free classes, and that's when I.
So was that your first entry into the learning part of the? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That was it. Prior to that, I used to call around, hey, what do you guys charge for oil changes? What do you do this? What do you do that?
Yep.
I didn't know how to price things, right? You mark up parts, really? Was that a thing? I didn't know that. So then I got in touch with Cecil and then kind of took off from there. I'm very grateful for that, to be honest. That was about the best decision I considered I made by far at that point, and getting in touch with Cecil, and that's how I obviously got to know you guys.
So for our listeners, Mac is talking about Cecil Bullard with the Institute for Automotive Business Excellence. So he, got his first opportunity with working with a coach in the automotive industry. Correct.
Yeah, I credit a lot of my success to him so far. It took off from there.
I want to pause and go back a little bit. I'm like the emotional side of things, and I'm just so in awe. And I mean, I grew up in America, right? I was born here, and I see we take for granted what is happening right in front of us.
Indeed.
And so here you are back in war zone, right? And fleeing your country. You were a teenager, leaving everything you ever knew. I can't even imagine what's going through your head. Tell me, what was that like? The whole, I'm leaving my homeland, my country, everything I've ever known. So you said that you had a lot of hope, but what fears did you have? What were you worried about?
The unknown. You don't know better. You don't know what's out there, right? But growing in Iraq, anyways, before the war, it wasn't bad actually. It was stable. It was all right. You didn't know better. We were limited. Yes, it was considered a third world country, and it still is. But you learn to appreciate. You appreciate that you actually have light 24/7. You appreciate that. You open the tap, there is hot water almost immediately because. It got to some point, and again, when I grew up and what I could remember, it's kind of not fair to the country because it has a great history, but my timeline, that's when things start falling down in that country. And so you learn you couldn't just go to the shower and open the shower and then let the water go and relax for 5 minutes with the hot water. No, it did not. Because you know what? Your mom got a shower, your dad got a shower, and your sister got a shower, and you only had 200 liters to deal with for that day. And then you still got to do laundry, do dishes, and cook, and all of that stuff.
Right.
So you learn, just put in a bucket, do this. And that's how you did that. Same thing with power. You know, we had power in phases when I was growing up. You know, you get 8 hours and then you go down for 6 hours, no power. So then you use alternatives.
Yeah.
You know, to get a generator hooked up and things like that. So it was different, you know. And yes, you're right. A lot of people grew up here don't know that. You can hear it is one thing, living it is something else.
Right.
So it makes a different person out of you. And then the war started. And at first it was very terrifying, you know, because when the war started, I was 14, I want to say. It was terrifying, to be honest, because you didn't know what to expect. You know, my parents were like, hey, we're going to go get rice, flour, you know, the essentials. And we literally had like 200 kilos of, you know, rice bags and flours and, you know, just the essentials, right? And then the alarm goes on, you know, and there you go. That's the first day, you know, and where we lived, the silence alarm was 200 feet from our house. It was pretty loud right there. So that thing goes on midnight and you're like, we were asleep and we got shocked and we were scared. And that's when mom was like, don't worry, let's just go here, one room right here, you know, all stick together. And then right after, you know, you hear boom, 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 boom. And at first, yes, it's hard and it's tough, and war is nasty. There's no nice way of putting it. It's nasty from all aspects. But what doesn't kill you make you stronger. So you learn how to survive. You know, you learn how to survive. You learn how to, every time you go to work or to school. I mean, my sister's school got bombed twice while she's in school, you know. And I switched in a couple bus stations from what I had to go. I worked in summer right there when there was no school. So switching a couple bus stations and, you know, about, 100 feet from where I was, a bomb goes off in that bus station as well. You know, so it was one of them things where you leave in the morning, you kiss your mom, you kiss your dad, your sister. Yeah. I love you. It's kind of like the last time. And then it became your everyday thing. So you get used to it. And yeah, at first you were terrified, but then it's okay.
But you learn to be grateful for everything, huh?
Absolutely, yeah, because you had to really work for it, earn it, learn, be smart on how to earn it. And it wasn't even available as much. You know,
I think of, right, kind of bringing it back over here to the United States, I have family members, I have friends who have everything they need to do what you did and wake up and put your feet on the floor and say, no turning back. The only thing is what's forward, and starting a business like that. That is a big deal. And you just have to work through every little thing, every little fear, every little, so here you are, you've left your country, which I can sense how much you love your country, and, there's history there and it's heartbreaking. But you talk about starting over. Mm-hmm. I mean, and not the way a lot of people are doing it today.
I grew up in a house where it's survival mode from the beginning. Most of my family members were successful in their careers, and my mom and her sister are into the sewing and dressmaking and all of that. My uncles are mechanics and have big garages. My grandpa had farms and things like this. On my dad's side, my aunties and their husbands, they were into civil engineering, so they had, hotels and lands and houses and things like that. And it's even worse when, you lose your house, you lose your business, your car gets burned, stolen, and then it makes it harder to start over, right? But to me, it kind of worked in a good way, and thank God for this, because again, I wasn't too old, but I was at that age, to where the downside to it is it stole my teenage years. I was never a teenager. I couldn't be a teenager. I had to learn how to, our stoves worked on gas right there. And then gas in Iraq, or at least where we lived in Baghdad, was 25-gallon tanks, metal tanks or containers, I guess, and then you had to roll these containers to the gas station where they sold gas as well, and then wait in line. I remember waiting in line 2 days, literally 2 days, rotating with my mom, rotating with my sister at the time, and my father, just because there's at least 200-300 people, and nobody's open, and you had to wait, and they'll work like a 9 to 5 type of shift, right? So then overnight you do that. It got that bad. It got really bad after the war. Excuse me. So you learn how to survive, right? You learn how to do that, and then once you see there is something better, or there is an option to get better or do better, oh boy.
Yeah, your whole face just lit up.
Oh boy.
Like you can still taste it.
Yeah, absolutely. There is that hunger right there, you can tell me that if you're telling me, I listen to Cecil and I can see a change from, 0 to 100. If I apply this, and that's when I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, that's doable. Yes, that's actually real.
Yep.
And hustlers, so just stick to it, and then you write it and keep going. No go back. Just don't go back. Just keep going.
So proud of you. I'm so excited to just know you and your story. It's just, you talk about people who have inspirational stories like that. That is it's life-changing, your story. Somebody's going to hear this and it's going to inspire them to say, okay, no freaking excuses. I can't wake up with the same excuse again tomorrow. Look what Mac did.
Yeah, it's doable, and nobody's perfect, and it's a learning process. And I keep emphasizing this, saying, what does not kill you make you stronger. Yes, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt, and it's devastating. And those who, thank God, luckily, we didn't lose none of our family to the war, right? Extended family we did lose. They got bombed or killed or shot or things of that nature. But even then, you move on, and you have to. Because life goes on, and you can sit down here and cry, and why is this happening to me? Or you can think of it, okay, well, take the good side of it is, what is it going to do? Just kick your butt a little bit, and then come on, get what's next? How can I make this to my advantage? So Tony Robbins, I love something from him, says, stop thinking, what is it? He says, don't think why life happens to me. Life is happening for me. When you look at it from that point to stand, I told Cecil the first day I met him, I tell all my friends, I said, you cannot offend me. Give me your best shot. Maybe you want to make fun of me or whatever, and that's great, and I'll laugh with you, but I'll give you a good example. When I was learning how to work on cars, there was this one guy I worked with, and it did not matter, because again, I started from scratch with the career where I had to get toolbox and things like this. And as you know, Brian, it gets expensive. And if you're not making that much, your Snap-on bill, is too fast. So you try to do your best slowly. So if I need a wrench or a socket or an idea from him, I'm like, hey, John, can I please borrow this wrench, and he'll give it to me, like, okay, here, and then if I go ask him the second time on it, he goes, the tool truck has it, right? Now, I'll give you the point of why I'm saying this. This kicked my ass. There were so many times if I ask him for an advice or if I ask him for something, right? He'll charge me like a 0.10 for it, for example, or like a 0.1 or 0.2 for it. I go, okay, but I got to leave my work. I said, what? I understand. I respect that. Can you please help me out? I got a customer that's waiting. I won these 4 hours on this car because that's my paycheck. I got a kid and a wife, and now you're being a jerk, not trying to help me, and still want to, charge me for it, in other words, and I'll do it, So there were times where a lot of people will look at it like, oh, what a mean guy, what a jerk, what a this, what a that, right? I look at it as, what, thank you so much, man. Because that kicked my ass, made me get to the next level to where I'm going to go and learn it. And yes, I'm going to pay for it this time. Next time I do it for free. Not for free, because I know it, you know what I mean? And thank you. Now I know this tool, I use it. And he's right. If you're going to need the tool more than once or twice, then you probably should buy it. Yeah. So I learn from this. I take it to my, I take it as a pusher.
Yeah.
When you come to my shop, for example, and criticize me or things like this, hey, you should do this way, you should do this way. Thank you so much. Yeah, all right, I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll consider it. I'll translate it to what it fits my scenario, and apply it accordingly. And I think that has a lot to it. When we first landed, again, my English was not good. So can you imagine how many people start making fun of my accent or language? And you had to learn English. You had to learn the culture. You had to understand your dollar, of course, your money, you know where to live, where not to live, what to say, what not to say. And during that process, not everybody got the patience for a foreigner. You're not speaking English, go out of here. Go learn how to speak the language, so on and so forth. In a way, they're not wrong, but in the same time, you got to have some mercy inside your heart. Help the guy. If you know how to advise him, and move on. And if I was gonna get mad or offended by everybody that called me a sandbag or whatever it was, these prototype names, I'll never move forward. You can't. You simply can't. You get your head wrapped up into it too much, and then then if you're emotional too much, then it hurts your feelings, and you just cannot move on. At least not at this speed.
Yeah.
All right. One sec. Sorry.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm dying over here. About to cough.
Way to hold it in.
It is hard to hold in a cough. Okay. All right. Yeah, so that's great. A lot of people get offended way too easily.
Yeah.
And taking that feedback as something, instead of looking at it as, oh, they just offended me, look at it and say that, well, there's some truth in everything, that people say usually, and looking at that and saying, here's an opportunity to get better. That's a big deal, and it's something that more and more people should really do. Absolutely.
Even learning the career itself, technicians are a tough industry, and then the automotive, it's a tough industry. The service advisor in the front office is nice and sexy and attractive and all of that, right? But in the back, there is a lot of, I don't know what it's called in English, but it's tough. Guys between each other, cussing, making fun and whatever, right? So you had to take it pretty good. I remember asking questions on cars, and you're like, did you really ask me this question? If you didn't know this, then you shouldn't be working here. I said, well, back when you were learning, I'm pretty sure you had to learn at some point. You did not come, knowing everything. You had to learn. And I don't believe in a stupid question. I talk to your team, when I have my meetings with them. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to be asking questions. And some of it may be stupid, but you know what? I need to know. I need to know the answer to that, so I know probably not to ask it or how to do it. I tell the customers, I'm not too afraid of telling you if I didn't know it, I don't know it. I'm not going to make a story up.
No, they love it. They come back from kickoff meetings with clients and they're like, oh my gosh, this guy, like he was asking all these questions. They love that. When you're engaged in the process, that is when we can really partner with somebody and really help them. And I'm telling you, I'm just so, I knew some of your story, but when you just take the time to really hear the whole thing, it's just so unbelievable to me. Again, there's people who are like, no, I just can't, that's just too much. So what you've done in less than 10 years, right? When you look at your whole lifespan, 10 years is like this tiny little segment, but what you've done, the stories you get to tell your son,
That's right.
oh my gosh, what a legacy.
Well, I want to get back to today, where you're at today with your shop, because you've got such a history there, and you're at this point now of everything that you do is just done with excellence. This shop that you've built, the way that you have outfitted it and everything, it's not a huge shop. It's a 4-bay shop. Yeah. A lot of people, they want to wait until they build that giant shop before they go all in on it and make it just a super nice facility and have all of the best tooling and all of that. But you didn't do that. So you're a 4-bay shop, 2 technicians, but your shop is like really, really nice. Tell us about why you did that. And also I want to talk about, the whole idea of you being that unapologetically, the high price in your area and how that has like changed your life and your technicians' lives and all that.
So the first part about the shop and why did I go all in? Back home, we didn't have access to tooling as much, neither the knowledge by the book. You had to be creative. Parts were not just available like are today. I did not really wrenched professionally back home because I was a kid, but you had to be very creative, man. I mean, that was the age where you open up an alternator and rewind it, get new brushes in there. You had to understand how many, rounds you do and winds and what to use and so on and so forth. As simple as gaskets you could not get back home. You get very creative sometimes and you use, paper, spray with oil. And then some of the old timers will know it works, that's not permanent, but it works. It does the job. So why did I go all in? Simply because part of it is we didn't have it. I can have it here. I can provide it to my team. The tooling is a big thing today, right? State-of-the-art scanners, equipment, and all of that. Again, I couldn't afford it back when I started. And I worked in these shops where, we don't have this, we don't have this. So as a result, the car took longer to get fixed, never gotten fixed right, and came back or a customer was pissed, so on and so forth, right? So I'm like, okay, and I can afford it now. I'm not going to stop. Yeah, it does get pricey. It does get pretty pricey, but it makes your life a lot easier. It does the job right the first time and faster and how it's supposed to be done, right? So I'm all, and plus I'm a technician. So we have that addiction, right? Yeah. We have that addiction, the tooling addiction. I mean, when the snap-on truck comes in, it's a bad day to the pocket. The other section of your question is the pricings. There is a price to quality. I value and quality and honesty. There is a price on that. When you come into my shop and you tell me, hey, here is your concern, right? I offer my customers this, and I challenge a lot of the shops out there because I think that's how our industry needs to be. I said, look, if we do not fix your concern, you pay me zero. Now, yes, that take a lot of work on the service advisor side, explaining things to customers, and telling them how things work, how the circuit work. But it's guaranteed. If you told me I have a noise right here and that noise did not fix, I don't want to charge you anything. And I take it personal. So part of it is that honesty, the transparency as we spoke about earlier on the inspections. Hey, Mr. Customer, here's what's going on with your car. This is what's going to fix it and get it back on the road today. The rest is going to take, a little while to, takes a little longer when you're going to need it in 6 months, so on and so forth. So just be ready. And if we're keeping the vehicle, it's going to cost you this much, obviously, on the long run. So where do you want to go from here, right? And, customers appreciate that big time because you're working hard for your money, man. I don't care what you do. You're working very hard for it. So it's not easy. You don't want to waste your money. And in my opinion, when you go in for, the method that other shops used to use back when I worked as a technician, it's a waste of money. You're taking his money today, and then when his transmission is going to go out in this next, 3 months because the thing slips already, and you can feel it as a tech. It's going to cost him $7,000 down the road right there. Some people just don't have that, or other people would rather trade it in. So tell that guy. So there's that transparency right there that you don't find a lot into the franchisees business, into the dealerships, not as much, and some of the other independents. So there is a cost for that. The other thing is the industry has shifted drastically. And equipments are not cheap. we spend a lot of time training and a lot of money on training. So all of that adds up. Plus, we want to make our industry some of the best industry out there where we can track new people. And the only way you do that is you got to pay them better. So kind of, eventually the consumer tracks it. I mean, everybody here talks in the summit talks about, my plumber costed me this much for this much.
Yeah.
My electrician costed me this much for this much, right? And, that's perfect. I don't argue it. They worked hard for their tooling and they need to make a living. Yeah. Today, you cannot live off of what, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month. You just can't. So
you can't pay your technicians top pay.
Exactly.
If you're competing on price.
Exactly.
And one of the things that Cecil said yesterday when he was talking that I thought was so interesting was he talked about one of his shops and how when something does go wrong, they're able to make it right because they are profitable. Exactly. The shop that is struggling financially, when something goes wrong, they can't make it right. They don't have the funds to be able to make it right. And in your case, because you are pricing, and I'm talking about being the unapologetically high price leader, really, you're probably the one that just is where you need to be, whereas the rest are just way too underpriced.
Yeah, they'll kill themselves, and you don't see it right away, but you'll see it on the long run. And I don't know if you agree with me or not, a lot of the old timers are out of the business, don't want to deal with it because Cecil talked about it yesterday. You undervalue yourself. It's not an easy career. It takes a lot of talent, man. I mean, we're fixing engineering mess ups sometimes,
Yep.
Why does an engineer has to get paid, $500,000 or $250,000 a year, and then I'm not saying we're engineers, but man, some of these problems we go through, or challenges we face and repairs and things like this, it's a lot of knowledge and a lot of, tooling involved into that. And again, that's part of, in my opinion, part of the technician shortage out there because our industry, hey, nobody wants to get dirty, it has the bad reputation to it, so on and so forth. And if we correct that because we deserve that, and it has gotten there. I mean, today your vehicle is a computer.
Yep.
Yeah.
You got multiple iPads or Android systems in there, CAN and bus systems back and forth. And the Euro market, some of the European cars has over, 50 modules in them.
Yeah.
So it's that, plus the value that we offer. I don't fix short-term issues, you're my customer, you're keeping your car long-term. I'm offering 3 years, 50,000-mile warranty on that. And I'm going to educate you and tell you why you need to do what you need to do. I'll show you that. I'll prove it to you. I tell my customers, if you want to listen to me, I'll prove it to you. I'll show you. This is the fun part to me.
That's good stuff.
Yeah. There's a lot of wisdom in the conversation that, we're having today, being able to hear, from where you started and where you are now. And, I hope that it inspires some of the listeners to kind of take the same steps in their own business.
Thank you.
So we really appreciate you being with us today.
I appreciate you guys.
And
your first time, I say you're a podcast rock star. It was awesome. I really enjoyed it a lot. Thank you for your time.
There is a first time for everything. It was terrifying at first, for me. But I thank you so much. I love this. It's awesome. And eventually we do need, somebody earlier was saying, we got to be the change. And yes, I totally agree. I want to get in touch with Cecil and brainstorm some ideas on how we educate the public, the consumer, on how to do things. And that will make us a better industry. And we are, because again, it is a good industry. I love what we do.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And to our listeners, we are just one of the podcasts on the Aftermarket Radio Network. There's some other great shows that you really should give a listen sometime. You can find those at aftermarketradionetwork.com. And we hope that you'll tune in again next week. Until then, go fill those bays.